for attending our panel on sex work in Newark, presented by the Queer Newark World History Project in collaboration with the Newark LGBTQ Community Center and the New Jersey Red Umbrella Alliance. And it's made possible with a grant from the New Jersey Council for Humanities. My name is Dominique Rocker. I'm a graduate student at Rutgers in American Studies, and I am a graduate researcher with the Queer Newark World History Project. So this event is going to be recorded, and it's going to be up on our YouTube page as well as the social media that I manage. So you'll definitely be seeing me posting different snippets and things from this event. Again, we're very grateful to have you here, especially to our panelists who will be offering a lot of their incredible and wonderful knowledge. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to our moderators. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Thayane. I am a PhD candidate at Rutgers University in Newark. I am in the program Global Urban Studies, and I research sex work, social movements, and organizing. So I have the pleasure to be here co-moderating with Professor Whitney Strub. Do you want to present yourself? Or? So I will then present the people in this wonderful panel. So Duran is a co-founder of the New Jersey Red Umbrella Alliance, a community organizer, human rights activist, and author who has been directly affected by police violence. Her local community work focuses on Newark, New Jersey, where she has participated in campaigns with Newark Communities for Accountable Policing to help establish the first civilian complaint review board. Janet has also contributed to national shadow reports on the human rights of U.S. sex workers presented during the Universal Periodical Review of the Human Rights Record of the United States by member states of the United Nations. Nyella Love provides communications, marketing, graphic design, and procurement services. Mrs. Rhee has been instrumental in New Jersey Red Umbrella Alliance's digital outreach efforts and is on the leadership committee. She has advocated for the human and labor rights of sex workers' rights since 2005. She's joining us remotely via Zoom. And she's also a journalist, BBW, adult, web model, and PSO. She's formerly an exotic dancer as well. She has organized and hosted a number of webinars and events for New Jersey Red Umbrella Alliance, including panels for the 2018, 2019, and 2020 Commission on the Status of Women in New York City. Aminah Washington is a 35-year-old trans woman of color, born and raised here in Newark, New Jersey. She graduated from Malcolm X Shabbat High School, followed by attending Boston Legal. She obtained a bachelor's degree in business communication and started her career path in hospitality, customer service, restaurant management in 2007. A self-described open book, she welcomes the community, the opportunity to chat. Raine was born and raised in Newark after her parents moved up from the South. The last of 6 children, she attended Central High School and worked in various agencies in Newark doing HIV prevention and establishing transgender support groups. She continues to do transgender outreach work and volunteers at the Newark LGBTQ Community Center. Married to writer T.T. Wardell, thank you. Since 1998, she has published Newark's first transgender-owned and edited magazine, Raine, since 2006. Nyella Love is an Afro-Latina woman of trans experience existing in America today. She was born in Youngstown, Ohio, and raised in New Jersey, but her passion for social justice and advocacy led her to New York City. Nyella has served as a peer advocate and trans conversations facilitator at the HIM, New Jersey, and as an HMI, and as an assistant program manager at the Ali Forney Center Trans Housing Program. She has featured in a beauty campaign with Sephora for trans and non-binary people alongside Isis King. In 2019, was a part of broadly gender spectrum collection produced by Zachary Drucker and modeled by Playout magazine. Evita Sawyers is a queer polyamorous author, content creator, educator, influencer, speaker, and peer support guide. She's the subject of the polyamorous documentary Nyella Love, has appeared on several major podcasts, including Inner Home Uprising and Multi-Amory, and has been featured in articles for Yahoo Life and Vice. She covers a variety of topics such as relationships, sex and sexuality, gender, and race. Frazier, the 40 years old long-term survival, a poet and writer, self-published, 2 chapter books, write for Raine magazine and several other local and nationally. He has a BS from St. Peter's College in Jersey City, Urban Studies, Public Policies, and Associate in Liberal Arts, Social Science from Essex County College. Mother of the House of Divine of Greater Newark, a volunteer for the LGBTQ Center, and currently working for the center at the library. So come down and play some drag queen bingo or come to some of our upcoming events downtown. A deacon of Unity Fellowship Newark Church, chair of the men's group, a member of hospitality, volunteer of Bethlehem Community Church, every 3rd Saturday of the month. Come on through if you can, either to help or get some food. Coordinator of Project Spiral of El Club del Barrio, was also the co-founder of the Thread, a long-term survival group since 2009, which met at Newark Community Health Center, and was chair of the community planning group, subcommittee counseling and testing, and consulted with the State's Department of Health and Senior Services, a previous member of Hyacinth CAB and Community Promise Program. Thrive Role Model Story as well, a long-term non-progressor study participant with the National Institute for Health. Community activist as well, and in his journey have learned to adapt, adjust, keep pushing forward, even when all they want to do is lay down. It's easy to complain from the sideline and not get involved in the process, but someone has to do it. Yeah, that's it. And after this long introduction, these people have a lot of experience. So this is definitely going to be an amazing panel. And thank you for being here. So let's pass it down to Professor Whitney.
Sure. Yeah, no, thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I'm Whit Strub. I co-direct the Queer Newark Oral History Project at Rutgers Newark, and that's part of what leads us to this panel. And so I think part of the imperative here, or the impulse for this panel, is to take sex work seriously, right? Take it seriously historically and politically, which is very much in contrast to the dominant ways that I think our media narrates this topic through sensationalism or trafficking tropes or things like that. We want to recognize sex work, as labor, and as part of LGBTQ history. And so maybe as an opening question, because we've got such a rich kind of brain trust of people with different life experiences and different kinds of knowledge, maybe we could go around and have all of the panelists say a quick word, however intimate and detailed as you like. This is not a question to pry for sensationalism, but just your own relationship to sex work and how you see it fitting into Newark's LGBTQ history in particular. You can read that more broadly, if that's too specific of a question, but to get the ball rolling, maybe everybody could speak to that. I don't know which order. It probably makes more sense to start on one end of the table and go around. I don't know. Go for it.
Thank you.
I have a question before I have the statement. What is the history? What do you think is the history of sex work? You said LGBT history. Why do you think that it's a history of sex work?
Oh, you mean what's the relationship between the two topics?
You said history. So history meaning forever lasting. It's been, before, say before Christ, or say,
I was thinking more recent than that. I guess I was thinking of your own personal sense of the history of sex work in Newark. And, for instance, whether you've seen change over time, whether it's the internet or policing or public policy, your own experiences. Kind of broadly, does that help kind of clarify? Just kind of broadly interpreted, but your own
Your
sense
own
of what-
experience.
Yeah, yeah.
Sex work.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's different things of different sex work. You know, sometimes people choose to go into sex work, and then sometimes sex work comes to a person. You know, in my case, I started doing sex work when I was 17, when I became homeless, and you know, it came to me. I remember the first time, me not going, be able to go somewhere or have money. My first thing was, I remember it was a sex shop down the street from where I lived, and when I first was homeless, that was the first thing that popped to my mind to go there, and it was accessible. It was people were there to willing to spend money, and you know, it wasn't you know, for me, if it was more other things that was accessible to me as a trans woman, I would have went that route, but at the time it wasn't, you know. So for me, sex work is a survival thing. You know, is to survive, is to put a shirt on your back, to eat, to live, and to just keep going. That was my experience.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, please.
So for me, my history, my personal history of sex work is, funny enough, very linked to Newark because I was a freshman at Rutgers, Newark in 2005, and that is kind of when I was first introduced to, I guess, like the realities of sex work. And for me, it was, I used to work at the bookstore that was on Bleecker Street. And it wasn't enough to survive on. And I wasn't in a place where, you know, working at the newspaper and working at the school bookstore was going to cover my tuition, and my parents were in a tight spot, and it was, you know, I wasn't going to give up on school. So I was like, I guess this is what I'm doing. And it just seemed, it was a complicated thing to do because, you know, I'm a fat Black woman. And at the time, even though I was young, and I think everybody feels like they're just the hottest when you're in college, but it was empowering for me to be in Newark because it was one of the first times that I was in a space where I was not the minority and not treated like a minority. So it felt a lot more empowering than when I was doing sex work and I felt like I was just the other, like being the exotic other for people of a much higher economic status than you. It's not always as empowering as people would like you to believe. But I felt, at least because Newark is in this very interesting place where there's just so many intersecting communities, whether you have all the immigrant peoples that are here, you have all the students because there's so many, you know, universities, and you also have, you know, it's one of the biggest places where people enter the country, whether that's for business or personal, but Newark kind of felt like a microcosm for America. So I felt like I got a very good introduction to how sex work interacts with so many different parts of American society, which is why when I do work advocating for sex workers' rights, I'm so emboldened to say, like, I'm just fighting for human rights, like first and foremost, because there's so many different types of people that choose or are have found sex work, and that is sustaining them, and it's valid for them to do so. Which, I'm grew up in Bergen County, and it was a little sheltered. So when I came to college, it was, well, to put it lightly, an education.
So yeah, picking back off of this young lady is, and more directly to your question, in reference to the history, I'm 35, but previous to me, I've had women of trans experience and even some family members that this was their mode of survival. It's sort of like a job. You're not gonna like every job, but you're gonna find what works for you, and that's what's gonna carry you through. Whether it be survival, whether it be, maybe this just worked for you. Maybe it's something that's fun. Maybe it is the aspect of, you having control. In my case, I have seen it as I was coming up from women of trans experience prior. But when I learned that there was a whole block in Newark, New Jersey dedicated to prostitution, it was like, shit, they're making money. And all they're doing is walking around, still living their lives. Whatever the purpose was, okay, it became like, I would like to know a little more about this. But then it became once you get that first, that first coin, it's kind of like, oh shit, and you doing little to nothing. So then in your head it's like, okay, you're not hurting anyone, but at the same time, you're not really giving yourself your full potential. So then it becomes a battle within yourself. And then some people just get worked in it. I'm in restaurant management, but I guarantee you, the way my mind's set up now, based on what I had to live through, and from the first sick I stuff to the first ad I posted, is I'm not gonna entertain nobody that's not gonna give me what I need. And if sex work is just not money, it could be as simple as like how these vixens do it, and they're getting houses and cars. You want what you want, I need what I need, and if we're meeting in the middle, everybody gotta be happy. So I just graduated high school. My dad just took ill. I was walking from Penn Station, minding my business, and going to my aunt's house on Murray Street. And this guy just kept circling. And I'm like, well, either he's going to rob me, he's going to rape me, but nonetheless, this is some weird shit. When he pulled up and flashed the money and then was like, this is what I need. And then it was so quick, I was hooked inside.
Kind of follow that. My history goes back a little further. Newark, let me see. I'm originally born in Patterson, raised for a few years.
Girl, Patterson got the best food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then my mom decided to go to Elmwood Park, which is, East Patterson for the old people.
That's where the point is really at.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So thank you. It was just, different leaving from Patterson to a predominantly white area. Things were different. I guess just, I didn't realize I was doing sex work as a teenager. Every time I got kicked out and I'm sleeping with dudes for place to sleep, just to have a roof over my head. And then it just, from there you just kind of get on a path of the fast and easy path.
You're coming back.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta live somewhere every time you're kicked out the house.
Yeah, but see, that was what works for you.
Yeah, I mean, it had to, I wasn't gonna be on the street, and it presented itself. And then we look back now, and we're like, yeah, that's why they're always looking for young girls that are running the streets. I mean, I still finished high school. I went to Montclair, did sex work through Montclair to get out of an abusive relationship. And just started working in Newark. So I'm actually, the dancing kind of came to me, but I'm really not, I'm kind of tone deaf. No rhythm. But I was like a day girl, because you know, the day girls get away with, you know, not really doing shit. But I mean, I used to work the parties way back when on, you know, South Orange and what was it, 16th or something, or
Yeah, I used to
South
work the
16th and
night
Orange.
parties and shit.
Yeah, there used to be a
But I
bunch of
was
locked
every
doors.
show out
Yeah.
here. Yes.
There used to be the locked doors there, and then we used to move over to the cop-owned after hours on Halsey and Branford.
You remember the one upstairs by the tattoo
Upstairs.
shop?
There was one that was somewhere that we had a lot of medical beds, so it's easy to do our dates. I was usually one of the only Spanish girls that actually went, and when I'd ask other girls, like, "Oh, girl, you going there?" I'm like, "Yeah." I'm like, they asked. I'm like, I just went. I mean, it wasn't really anything to me. Like, I just didn't, I don't know. I'm from Patterson. I mean, I wasn't really raised or taught about how Hispanics and Blacks always get along until I started dating. And then, you know, then everybody true colors come out. Before then, it's people are all people. It doesn't matter what color they are. Purple or yellow or green, we're all people until you start dating. But yeah, I mean, I just continue sex work because when I graduated in '01, the buildings fell, boom. Then you have to compete with people, like competing with the people that lost their jobs and have way more experience. So I just said, there's no way I'm gonna go to starting salary of like 30, 40 grand from what I was making. And I was graduated with a second kid in tow. But then I just left. I went to North Carolina and checked out the scene there in sex work for some madams and stuff. But I mean, it's still here. I came back up to Newark. I've been here for a while. I've discovered how a lot of the bars throughout the area still have their little, after they shut down, they will still have people tricking and then pretend like nothing's happening. I lived next door to one for a while. Let me see, the bars in the Ironbound, same shit. I bartended them and the guys used to come in all the time, like talking to the bartenders and like, I don't understand, one bar used to have 20 meseras. Like you have 20 women just hanging around waiting to dance and drink with guys and they get paid for every drink, like the guy buys them and dance. And I'm like, okay, but I just bartended because again, I can't dance. But I mean, it worked for me. But they all used to come in, I used to hear them talking about the afterwards. I said, so that's how they do it here. And mind you, these were bars in Newark that all had cops manning the door. So I don't think the element of law enforcement not, you know, totally being involved, because they look the other way to people they approve of doing sex work. Or people they can exploit and take advantage of doing sex work. That's when they let them, because when our mayor was doing his things, I have to refrain from, you know, anyway. We definitely publicly attacked how they did their things on specific communities, only looking, you know, it's like, why are you shaming them, putting their info up?
But with that, that's what it is more of like how the police or law or politics is not more so, they're more quick to shame the trans community or LGBTQI because it's a lot of, then nobody was really educated. It was no conversations like this openly. It was, you know, lesbian young women getting killed. So it kind of was like, anything in that spectrum, fuck y'all. And we're not really like too keen on how y'all survive, if this is a survival, you know, just out of sight, out of mind. But if it's brought to the forefront, they want to criticize it because they're not educated. So in reference to that, it's like, she got a point with some cops from the other chiefs, but then you got some cops, they just don't know. They're the client to the sex workers.
Some are sex workers, like cops.
And the cop car they date you.
Yes.
And the cop car.
I used to do dates with cops like on their break, like, and not even always on their break. They just have the radio, give me 10 minutes, you know? And it's like,
I did dates for cops while I was in the dorm and they knew I was a student. But it was just like, don't say anything. And when a guy, you know, takes his gun off his holster and puts it on the table, you just do it. You're not gonna question or do anything about it. But yeah, cops super complacent until they're not, or until you say no.
Or until you report them and other fucked up shit they do. Like when they're trying to flip you to rat out, and then you say, well, why don't you fix the problems within your own policing community? Then they're just, yeah, it gets worse. But it's about calling them out on their hypocrisy. I mean, Newark's pretty bad though. I mean, I literally got chased out of here a couple of years ago. Like, we always got alerts on all the prostitutions things, and a lot of them were against the trans community, always raised us think about that. And there was a few, and I noticed some either older women or undocumented, and then a couple of men thrown in there. And then, you have to start paying attention. Thank God we got those alerts, because then we're aware of who they're gonna be trying to flip to set you up.
I could say that I watched like 3 girls get arrested in front of my face, and the cop told me to go and right in North. And I'm like, oh. And they was Black girls. And, like you said, it is a skin, it is a thing that they approve of you, or, you look good, or you look like this and you're not like that, and, type of things. And, yeah,
it's the same thing with violence against us. I mean, if we're not deemed worthy victims, like, I don't know how many times I've been assaulted, how many times I've had broken bones, and they just sweep it under the rug. You can get raped, sodomized, or sweep it under the rug. They're just scores. We're not, no human involved. Like, we don't count. It's like, okay.
Yeah, but even still, when you take away the horror or the prostitution as LGBT, it's just like not really. Up until a few years ago, they have gotten better. So the spectrum to the history is like, now that it's like thrown in their face, and that we're making them to understand us. And so you got some that are more receptive and more understanding because they want to and take the knowledge. But then you got those who just are so narrow-minded. They're just like, oh no, gay this, gay that, LGBT this, tranny that. And then it's like it becomes a level of disrespect. So yeah. And history has changed, but not as much as it should in Newark, with it being so front and center. Especially now we got so many centers, so many agencies, some laws in place, thanks to that secrecy, Yeah, like it's some things in order where people are really actually taking the transition serious. Now it's becoming more of like, okay, you got some that doing it because they are educated to do it, but then you got those that are just still stuck in their ways. So we ain't come as far as we possibly could or should have in Newark when it comes to the politics and the respect and understanding thereof when it comes to prostitution, it being survival. Like Nyella expressed, I've seen a girl who make her money get beat and robbed, and they take her to jail because she was prostituted. What about her injuries? What about what she just went through as a human type shit?
As moderator, I want to call on Aaron because I know you had a hand up, and then we get this side of the table in too. But
I'm going to go from historically. What they know as the stroll now with West Kenny and Mulberry and all that little crap down there. Well, you are right in front of what used to be the stroll. The women was down by the Broad Street station. The Butch Queens was over here. No, not anymore. Allow me to finish. They're no longer really over here because of the college, and also because several of the white Johns that used to come around, they would try to, the white Johns got into the habit of trying to beat the black tricks. So when they got turned down and they started running to the Rutgers police and Newark police, so they started shutting it down for people who was tricking down here. So, and the trans girls used to be across the street going around 500 in the new Verizon building. Well, I used to work over there back in the day, honey. So I would come out on my lunch break, take my lunch, cruise through the park, have me at least 2 days, go back into work and pay no mind. But you can always come out any time of the day. You would always see somebody carrying on in the alleyway of the church, going to the back, or any way along that little strip there, or in back of that little parking lot there. My reason for saying change, a lot of it has changed, transitions from there to West Kenny Street, but the girls are really more safe down at West Kenny Street. I used to go down there with my girlfriend, Miss Poochie. We would stop at the music room. I always had to get me a 40 to walk to the stroll with her, and then I go, go about my way when she, I get her to where her spot was, and I do my thing. But I never really had a lot of the problems that the girls did. I think I did 2 tricks. One, whereas I had already did the duty and was getting out the car, the hoodlum put the damn knife to my throat. So I said, okay, he just wanted his money back. So I gave back his money, but I said, he's so lucky, but I paid it. The next one was, one of my friends had just taught me how to check somebody with a gun. And I was like, really? And I just happened to do that. And oh my God, how the hell am I getting out of here? After that, I was so glad for Acting 101. I had to really put on a show and tears and everything, but I could have lost my life then when the guy put the gun to my head. But after that, I said, oh no, I'm not built for this tricking shit on the street. So I started just picking and choosing, calling different ones, that I knew I could get guaranteed whatever. And that's how I did. I moved away from just being out there on a corner because that's where I saw a lot of the danger. Then you had a lot of people down at here at Washington Park. I don't care who you were, but if you were more popular and you come out there and you less than 5 minutes, you done turn three cars, people were setting them up, and those kinds of people was getting hurt. That I didn't like. And then some of the ones who you thought were your friends, no, if you didn't come up with them and you ain't really Judy's, like me and Angie go way back to high school, yeah, you were set up and you were got. So I didn't play that. I just traveled, whatever I did out there, I was alone, but I always was in a phone call of a tribe that'll come down here and set it off.
Do y'all remember the movie theater that was up there, the sex movie theater?
Which one? Oh, you talking about the Cameo or the Little?
The what?
The Cameo and the Little.
The one that was
The
right,
Little was still there, it was the Cameo.
Right, the one with the boy, the
The one
child
by
guy.
Military Park?
no, this one right here on
It was Orange Street, well, really right around Orange Street and Broad. The boy got one of the reasons that it got shut down, the boy's ex-lover or whatever came in and he got stabbed inside.
right over here, right in the middle of
Yeah, so that's when they shut that down. And I had girlfriends that would be in there just.
Yes, you used to sit in that seat and then the next person comes to you and be like, you want to do this?
Right in the lobby, just while everybody else is running around turning dates and this.
I was 16 years old in there.
That was the Cameo.
And Una got a point. It's changed, but not like a major change when it comes to the sex work or like however anybody want to label it. But the locations have changed, and the dynamic of the demand of what these tricks is wanting has changed. So now that adds a different dynamic when it comes to like, okay, the stature or the demographic of what the client or the trick is looking for, or vice versa. I'm not a girl that's gonna date off the internet any black boys. It's not gonna work for me. But if I'm in the street, I'm playing with the black boys all day.
Why are so people
I
so
never
afraid of
understood.
black men?
Say it again.
Why are people afraid of black dating?
Well,
black men?
sometimes, but when, for
See,
me,
for me,
my
I'm more
girlfriend,
safe
Miss
with black people.
Alnisa was real. Alnisa was so
Yeah,
real, but they set her ass up. She went to the hotel. She put one boy, once she got in there, all these boys ended up coming out of the damn closet to jump her. And I'm like, really? But you know, it was like, we heard this after the fact. Now, if this was like, say, for instance, beforehand, we with her, no, they wouldn't have got that off. Because one of the things that we did back then, Poochie, all of that, I don't give a damn where you was from in Newark. If you was a friend and we all, you know, I could be 2 blocks, nobody gonna fuck with Angie. While I'm rolling around, and there was times that I didn't even let everybody know I had a car and I was riding around up on people. You know, and that's how I was rolling. So it's like, no.
Yeah, they don't have a buddy system no more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm a trick by myself. I don't.
So that is a part of evolution too, because they had the buddy system. I can't see for having that many bitches around me,
Yeah.
girl. I'm here for my coin. I see you when I see you.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm out, I'm here for a purpose. So what we doing? Like, okay, I'm not, oh, I'm here just to see what the night is giving. No, normally you got a quota and you want to make your money.
I think the biggest change that I saw, like, in 2005, I'm a college girl, so I was way more comfortable in online spaces. Like, I have never done like street-based work, like bars, yeah, but never like on a stroll. But what I noticed when I was doing online work, like I had a neat system. So I had 3 different price points depending on 3 different websites. So Craigslist was usually the lowest price point, but like the faster booking. And then it was City Guide, that was like the midpoint because, well, City Guide, BigDoggy.net, those kind of things were like mid price point. And then there is like Eros.com and the TR, the erotic review, those were like the highest price point that you could go to. So, it's always funny to me when I see people like disparage sex workers based on how much they charge. I'm like, we're all charging different things, is how you find us, because, the average user for the erotic review, has been in what they call the hobby for a longer time. And, there's sections for, actresses and adult actresses and like, celebrities down on their luck. But the point where you brought up about feeling safer with Black men, that is definitely how I felt. But I realized when I was an online worker, especially at like the higher price point, it was pretty much predominantly white men, despite the fact that because I did feel a lot safer with like men of color, I specifically put on my ads, like, I only see men of color. Like, I'm sorry, I'm not accepting dates from white gentlemen at this time. And I went from, my website had about like maybe 25, 50 hits a day. After I said, oh, I'm only seeing men of color, I was getting like thousands of hits because all the white hobbyists were sharing it, and they had this like weird bidding war, like trying to get me to see them. And like, those were the worst, most terrifying motherfuckers I've ever had to deal with in my life. So much so that like that was the first time I was like, well, I'm not doing full service. I'm not built for this. I'll go back to dancing. And I started doing like cam and PSO work, because I'm like, if I'm going to be forced to interact with these mostly white clientele, I do not want to be in the same room with them because it is scary. And it's not like I'm saying like there's something inherently wrong with white men. I just think because these
There is
guys
something.
who have the power, they abuse it. And they also know that a lot of them were booking me because I'm like half Asian. So they were looking for somebody submissive, and in their mind, it was just, I want somebody abusable. So it was just not a great experience. And the racial dynamic in sex work, just because we're in this white supremacist country, if you are a sex worker of color and your clients are white, you will be at like the fulcrum of full like white supremacy, like, and it will take a toll on you. At least it took a toll on me.
I can see what you're saying in that spectrum because, and then in reference to history too, it's really about what you present. Because for me, I didn't have the same experience with white men that these young ladies may have had. But I know the first time I've ever felt like my life was threatened was by a Black man. And you cannot imagine what it feels like to be in that state of mind in your own house. That's not a cool feeling. So naturally it puts in your head like a guard that, hey, if you don't entertain this time, you won't have to engage or have to that happen to you again, or the possibility. Whereas with the white men, they live by once you go Black, you never go back. So it was like they're giving me my coin, and that's my objective. I'm not here to fall in love. Cute or not, I need my money. And if you're coming here, you better have my money type thing. So that is a part of history too, because now some girls is only dating Black boys because of their dick size, or because, oh, he's cute. Whereas it was prostitution, from what I understand and what I even still to this day.
There's no,
and
race, no size, no color.
Yeah, but I need my money, and that's just it. Like people, even in a relationship, I was explaining this to my cousin yesterday. Like, bitch, I prostitute my relationship too because my man's gonna give me what I need, what I want. It's not we just doing this and this the one-sided thing. Sex work is a universal thing. It's all in how you present it. It's all in what you receive. It's all in what you put out. Because why do men cheat? Because they're not getting whatever at home. So if you're giving them everything you need, they're going to give you what you need. That's a form of sex work.
So can I use the moderator privilege to cut back in? Because we didn't wait just to go back to the original questions and hear from everybody. Angie, I don't know if you want to take that.
Well,
it's quiet.
yeah, I've listened to y'all because I think I'm like one of the oldest on the panel, so I got history. It's okay, I'm still alive.
Still here.
Thank you. No, sex work in Newark is history with me because I transitioned just as they were trying to outlaw male and female clothes. Me and Tracy, Africa, we was right there. And there was Cameo, The Little, and the Ormount Theater. Y'all probably never heard of that one. The Ormount Theater was on Orange Street. And as Aaron said, the guys was down here, the girls was at the other end. And for me, when I transitioned, I worked at a club. And like when the club closed and I had been there for a while, I started wanting to hang out with the girls at the club. And they would go down on the stroll and they'll be like, you stay here. And I'm sitting back and watching everything go on because it was amazing for me. And back then it was kind of crazy because they made their money, then like I would hang out with them and, drink get high. And after I lost my job and I was still hanging out with them, seeing them, I started getting high on something else, opposite of what they were doing. So for a few years, not a lot, but for a few years, I was out there. And a lot of what these girls are saying did go on, the robberies and not being bothered with certain color of men, the demographics of the economy of each man, you know, I've seen all that. So for me, my experience was being out there because of my drug use. But once I got tired of the drugs, I got tired of the streets. So after that, like even during that period or before that period, I was always in committed relationships. So after all that ended, I went back to just being in committed relationships. And that kind of led me to where I'm at these days because at that period of time, Aaron and a couple of people, William Bell and Bernie, you know, they incorporated me into working for Project Fire, which actually pushed me to work. I didn't have to do the streets. I still knew men and they still was breathing up my ass. But, you know, I felt that I didn't want to do that. I was good at it, but I didn't want to do it. Okay. I didn't want to do it because I felt that there was a better life for me, which it turned out to be true. You know, got married, started my own magazine, in a little shit ass job right now, but it works for me, you know. Guys that try to talk to me, you know, I kind of stop them in their tracks. You know, it has nothing so much to do with it being about sex work. It's just that at this point, my mind is so committed to doing other things that the first thing a guy says to me, oh, well, you know, you look high maintenance. And I, you know, I kind of shrug it off. And then they keep persisting. So I have to just tell them, I am not a gold digger. And they're like, oh, well, you look, I'm like, looks can be deceiving. I'm not a gold digger. I'm a diamond miner. That settles that real quick, you know? And going back to the history, Newark's history for transgender and male sex workers was steadily dangerous back then also. It's been a whole lot of girls that died in Newark behind being on the street. There's been guys that they don't document about that have been killed via sex workers, you know, and I'm not going to tell my age, but, you know, in the past few decades, almost everybody I know is dead. I was around for the disco era, and everybody I know from back then, with the exception of Christine Hamlet. Yeah, and maybe one more person, they're gone. You know, and
You think it's because they stayed in the streets?
oh, quite a few of them left that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, they did Paris is Burning where they found the baby in the closet. Well, she was under the mattress and posed, they put her in the closet. But
The baby.
anyway,
The one? That's a baby? It was a baby?
no. In Paris is burning, for real.
No, they said it was a grown man.
No, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
but what she's saying is the baby, like in comparison, is like,
Yeah, she's a young girl.
yeah, a young girl. found-
yeah.
Yeah, that type. of
Right,
thing. And
but
let's see, you posed an amazing, what's the name, because this is 22, just in 19, right before all the shit hit the fan, I was working at AOGC. I'm not gonna get too in deep in it, but I have to talk about this because this is history. Like, she experienced losing all of her friends this way, and it was survival. And the trans and male LGBT gay males had, we had to do what we had to do. And then here I am, almost 20 years later, and one of my nieces, she was traveling, prostituting as Aminah, what's the name, and got killed in Philadelphia. And it's like, that part of history is still right here, no matter
it
how.
came from here.
Every year, trans are getting killed, and 90% of it, if not all of it, is based off sex work and or someone
Addicted
not
to
having no respect for them just trying to make a living.
Yeah.
And years ago, right in Military Park, there was a trans woman that I knew. She got beat to death with a hammer. That's the point I was getting to. But these things will not be documented. Because
That part of history is still consistent. It's just
yeah,
right now they really got great at hiding shit and kind of just like
sweeping it
shrugging
under
it
the
off.
rug.
That's what I've been
Sweeping it
saying.
under the rug.
Everything gets swept under the rug.
So
Because
that is yet to change. And
yeah,
over
that's
time.
that's gonna take.
I don't
It's
think that, I
people in charge,
personally
that
don't
generation,
think
yeah.
that would never change because they don't want that to be awareness. That is not something that they want people to
awareness,
know,
right.
that they allow people to kill these people or brutalize these people in their government, in their state, in their city, nothing.
They don't want
And not
to feel
doing
they're
nothing about
ineffective.
it, right?
They're very
And not
ineffective.
knowing that they don't care because it's not their kid, it's not their family, it's not bringing money to them, it's not making awareness of what they do to make it seem like that they care.
But
'Cause they
then
don't
you got
care.
some that be bandwagoning it, i.e., my granddaughter Barton, when she was attacked as an LGBT young lady trans in Eastside High School, it took for me to call Channel 12 News for the mayor, the office was right across the street, to want to get involved and want to put more police out on the street right downtown. And it's like, this young lady was going to school and the boy was in her face. And now we're pretty much saying you can't get an education and live your life how you decide to live your life, because you're gonna have to fear for your life. No one's gonna respect that.
Also, some of the, I'm gonna just do the I statement. Some of the girls and some of the queens that, that has been killed over the years from my era and the engines. A lot of them, they dealt with people who didn't want to be outed. They dealt with people who didn't want their business out there. And because of how they talked or whatever, they'll get loud or read them. I've found out about several people, young men, nice little queen, dealt with somebody and just was the wrong person, and in the midst of them carrying on, they threw him off the roof. One of my other friends, Miss Tiffany, was a sweetheart. They did her in, and I'm like, what the fuck did she do? She didn't do nothing, but because of who she was. And that happened to quite a few of at least my girlfriends who are no longer here today. So it's like you have to be mindful. Yeah, the date or the trick looks good. Yes, the piece may be good, but sometimes it's not even worth it.
A lot of times.
All money is not good money.
And sometimes people do not know the best way to, like me, I have a feeling in my gut, in my stomach, in my soul, who I should date or what should I do with this person, because you have to be aware of that. You have to be aware of these certain people because they're out to get us. They're out to do so much things to give us the diseases, to kill us, to make us feel less than and fair. You know, I have a couple of dates who asked me if I ever was sexually assaulted when I was young, or, you know, that those things that brings light or feeling good to them, that tears us down. You know, when like that's a quick, like, you gotta go, like you gotta or how old were you when you first got touched? And those are things that turn them on. I had a date who asked me to meet him outside one day, and we're driving around, and he was like, "Can you find me a 12-year-old girl?" And let me, I promise you, while he was driving, I smacked the shit out of him like a couple of times, because number one, that could be my sister, that could be my niece, that could be anybody's child, and you're out here looking for things like that, and you think that I'm gonna lead you to that direction? You think I'm gonna lead you there?
Can I make sure, just, did you want to jump in? I wanted to make sure you got the mic.
I was just really listening to everybody else's story. So I don't really have a whole lot of understanding of sex work industry in Newark specifically. I mean, I grew up in New Jersey, but Jersey City, and then I lived in California for 20 years, and I just moved out a year ago. And I've engaged in sex work personally, but very nominally, and it was certainly not anything that, to the extent that some of these other people here have engaged in. But I have a variety of experience with sex work because I have a variety of, since the work that I do is sex education, I talk about relationships, sex, things of that nature. And so because of that, I have a lot of different people that I'm connected to that are in a variety of kinds of sex work, from cam girls to full service, to dancers, to sex parties, to sex therapists, to call girls, to all kinds of stuff. And so because of that, I have a lot of like snapshots of like what sex work looks like, the types of people that are involved in it, who, you know, the sex worker, why they do it, what they do it for, from, you know, people, I have friends that have been trafficked before, you know, I have people that are very empowered in how they interact with it. And so it's a very broad topic, and no one person's experience with sex work is the same. No person's motivation with sex work is the same. No one's feelings about it is going to be the same. And sex work advocacy is something that's very near and dear to my heart, number one, because as a person who does educate around sex education, I understand how important everybody having self-actualized sex lives is, and having autonomy over how they engage in sex and with whom and in what ways. And then also based on a lot of the things that the people here have highlighted, not having these nuanced conversations about sex work and decriminalizing it and making it so that sex workers can be dignified in this work, it's very, very unsafe. And so I'm like, how are we having these conversations so that we can begin to, you know, make sure that the people that are engaging in sex work are safe, you know, that they're able to engage in it in the ways that they want to, that they're able to consent to how they interact in sex work, that they can leave when they want to, like, you know, and so that's kind of why I'm here. And like I said, my experience with sex work is much more broad. And kind of, like I said, global, you know, in that I have a lot of like exposure to a lot of different varieties of sex work in a lot of different places, and like what different people go through as they engage in that work. And I think, you know, part of this conversation is around the stigma that we have for people that engage in this kind of work, and, you know, what kinds of people that they are, like how they were saying, you know, when people get brutalized or they get murdered or they get assaulted, usually the response from not only the police, but also the community is, well, that's what they deserve. That's what they deserve, because, they're lower than human, or they're less than human, or they're not, reputable people because they're engaging in this kind of work. Even if someone is a patron of that kind of work, they will still hold that, that mindset, on the surface, or, that they'll have that facade. And so, the stigma around sex work really, really needs to come down, because even if you were to say decriminalize it, you still haven't changed the hearts and minds of the people, and the hearts and minds of the people are the ones that enforce the laws. So, so I think it's, there's a broader conversation around, needing to destigmatize the people that engage in sex work, humanize them. It's not, you're not a bad person for engaging in it. Everybody, to some extent, interacts in sex. Sex is a human need. And so people choosing to sell it for money is no more or less moral than someone who's having sex with somebody because they bought them dinner, So, and so I think that, these conversations need to happen, so that way, we can have, people can be safer as they're engaging in this, because, there's nothing wrong with, it's a service to me, no more than a massage or anything like that. And so, people should have the right to do these things safely, workers specifically, but also clients as well too. So yeah.
She got such a great point, because in Vegas, it's a whole bar, 24 hours, and the police will make sure you're okay and everything. And it's prostitution. They could watch you. You get in a day car and they won't stop you. But that, like she said, is about the law enforcers and the politics. Like here in New York, we're getting there, not fast enough, but it's not no seats open. That's like, hey, a real live active spot on the commission and the mayor's office for LGBTQIA personnel to sit there and really be able to say, hey, this is the direction that we should be engaging to inform, the policers or even the first responders. One of my brothers, he had gotten into a situation and he was bleeding bad. So the EMTs came. The lady was like active and agile and trying to help him. And the third guy said to the other guy, "Oh, this is the gay party. Don't you know the other guy was kind of like standoffish?" That's the stigmatism she's talking about. Mm-hmm. See, it's so much more broader to LGBTQIA and trans that they just are not educated on and don't really care, because they don't give us the opportunity to hold these positions to be like, hey, this is what you really need to know based off what others are trying to paint the picture or put in your head. So politics-wise, New York is lacking so much.
One of the things that I observed in my journey as an individual, a lot of our community, and specifically men, are emotionally detached. They're not really putting themselves on the receiving end of some of their actions, the behavior, until they are actually confronted, whereas it's like it's something personal. It's their child, it's somebody that they care about, someone that they actually have feelings for. Then it becomes a problem and they don't know really how to either nourish it, work with it, share it when it comes to relationships. And I'm speaking from experience because most of the men that I was dealing with early on were married men and still had problems dealing with me as a person. And I'm not trying to be a lover, we're just intimate. But even though I'm not trying to get no feelings, yeah, I might develop some feelings, but what ended up happening, they don't know how to really deal with it, and they're developing feelings, and they become, what you call it, they're controlling. Okay. When they become controlling that part, that's the issue with them. And because they don't know how to control the emotion, they're emotionally detached. They don't know how to.
They don't know how to navigate their feelings.
Right.
Yeah. So they true about their feelings.
But that's also why and how a lot of our counter sisters and brothers are being hurt. They got involved with somebody and then they want to just leave. And because they want to leave, they get the short end of the stick because he didn't know how to deal with it or let go or deal with the rejection of them leaving.
And I think that also has to do with the fact that it is illegal. So, and that kind of comes with commodifying intimacy for the highest dollar. Is you do see that person as an object, you see that person as an employee of sorts. And we live in a society where the customer is king, you know? So, and so if you're giving someone money for an experience, we don't tend to look at that person as being able to say, you know, have boundaries, or to be able to say, you know, I don't want to do this with you anymore because I don't like the way you're treating me. And then when you have the stigma of seeing a sex worker as someone who is less than, someone who is not, who should not have the ability to say no, or to say, you know, don't treat me that way, or I don't want to interact with you like that, or don't touch me like this, or whatever, or to negotiate because, you know, you're giving them money. And then it's also illegal. So it's not like they really feel empowered to go to the cops and say, hey, this person did this thing to me, or I've been telling this, you know, John to stop contacting me and they won't stop. You know, it's just a prime breeding ground for the worst to come out in people. And unfortunately, you know, people that engage in sex work kind of see that worst side, especially when you're dealing with men too, and that sense of entitlement, and then, you know, put money in there, it's a hell of a cocktail. And so, you know, that's why decriminalization needs to happen, so they can feel empowered to say, hey, you can't do whatever you want to do with me because I can actually go to the law and be taken care of. And you know, and you have the fear of someone backing you, other than maybe, you know, if someone has, you know, someone that they're working with, like a pimp or something like that. And sometimes that is the only way that you can assure safety, especially when you're out on the street. But that comes with its own, you know, set of issues and problems. So, you know, that's why decriminalization is so important, you know, so that there is that added layer of like, hey, you just can't do whatever you want to do with me because I actually have the law on my side as well.
Yeah, and when it comes to decriminalization, if you were to report it, then it wouldn't navigate them to record check you because you reported something. And now you're the target versus what you came to report. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a million follow-up questions, but Thayane, I don't know if you wanted to take the floor with questions.
I have this one question that it was so rich. You touched base in so many points, but we see in Newark this move recently in these few decades of attracting the ideal citizen, right? You mentioned like the reputable people, the upper middle class people, whites, and attracting from New York City, these people, right? So how do you see that change, and how is that impacting your lives, if ever, influencing your lives in some kind of way?
Well, for me, it made me have to leave Newark. I used to, when I graduated from Rutgers, and I was dancing, and then I got my first corporate gig, and I feel like I have some, two dimes rubbed together, and I got my first apartment in Newark, right in front of Broad Street Station, the two towers, and I would not be able to afford my apartment right now. And I was in that apartment complex, as nasty as it was, just plagued with bed bugs. But they were getting all the gentrifiers. So when I got the apartment in 2010, my rent was $790. And then by the time I had to move, which was only about 5-6 years later, the rent was over $1,000. And they were trying to get more of these so-called model citizens. But for me, they were just the worst neighbors. I actually had an incident where a drunk guy, probably some grad student, drunkenly tried to shove himself into my apartment because he was too inebriated to know that he got off on the wrong floor. And the security guard was apologizing to him instead of calling the cops on him because he tried to force his way into my apartment because like he had fancy clothes on and a fancy watch. But like I was the one who was attacked, but like that I don't see that trying to get these quote unquote model people, and we just call them gentrifiers. The gentrifiers aren't going to improve Newark. They don't love the city. They are openly hostile to the people who grew up there and were there when they got there. And I feel like a lot of the newer people, especially when I was trying to get another corporate gig, because I was like sick of dancing while I was still living on Broad Street, going to get jobs, I would look at the description and they would literally highlight how you could get to this office without stepping foot in Newark. Like you wouldn't have to be on the streets of Newark. And like, why would you want to attract the type of person who is too afraid to step foot on the street to work here? And then, they put up the big fancy high rises and remodeled. And now that 1180, that building, when it was new, you could get a junior studio for $1,800 a month. That's like Manhattan prices. Like, who can afford that?
I see gentrification as the new redlining, basically. And what she's saying, that's how I see the Prudential people coming out. They entice the New York Prudential workers to come here. They have these shuttles to shuttle them from Penn Station back and forth. And you literally watch them when come time for them to leave work. It's like they make a beeline running, hauling ass to them shuttles. It's like they can't get the fuck out of Newark fast enough. But this is the people they're catering to. This is the people they want. And it's sad and pitiful. Like I really just,
On the prostitution spectrum, it is more coin, but it's also for those who don't mind the white men, because everybody wants their snack at lunchtime. but so on the prostitution spectrum, I have, because my phone rang more in the daytime than it's like night, and at night I be running. But on another spectrum, the gentrification is like, damn, like, how dare you look down on us, and we was born here, and we're really part of the change here, and you're just a visitor or a newcomer or onlooker.
A transplant.
Right, and you feel like we're less than, it's like, then that's kind of like, now what do we have to go on?
So for me, I look at them like they're less than. Like I look at them like they're garbage, and it's no affection. Like I don't have no type of thought or feeling towards them, because it's just like, what can you do for me? Type of attitude, and I make them feel like they're not welcome, or scared, or.
Well, when it comes to the gentrification thing of people moving in to Newark, all I see is tricks relocating. That's all it is.
But you know what I do love? I love the black side of it. Because you have the white and the black that is making it better. So I love for Newark, like the feeling of Black culture that is being added to it in a way. That's my favorite part.
Yeah, the different race of tricks. That's all. That's being honest. I mean,
Well, I'm saying more so like the stores, the,
We're not talking regentification, we're talking regentified tricks. That's coming here to Newark, and it's making the sex work industry for these young ladies a little harder. And they do online dating, which isn't safe. And it isn't. And no, and
I feel
then
more safer in the streets.
and
I
then
love online.
you know these young girls now, they do what is called a tour. And I'm like, you're not a damn musician or an entertainer. What the hell you mean tour? They go.
Yeah. It is entertaining.
Okay.
Some people are just
I would like to say that I'm an experience, so I feel like I
In my
should be
bio-
on tour.
On my Instagram, it says performer. So.
Stunts.
I actually feel like FOSTA and SESTA is one of the leading reasons why online is no longer safe. Because, I mean, for me, when I started, you know, I shouldn't say that. I have to say, I was like, I'm ancient. I started hooking on MySpace, but obviously that's not the case in this room. But like in that era of social media, we would have the sites and the communities where you could do date check, where you could have like bad mugs and like report the people who were doing harm. We had like a really bad actor that we had to actively go after, and that was all done, and people had a lot of proof of his misdoings because we had a system that we were holding dates accountable. And now FOSTA SESTA says that that's illegal. Like I remember I'd be walking down Market Street and somebody would try to like recruit me, and back in the day I would just like look at them and be like, well, what are you going to do for me? I was like, oh, you're going to manage me? How? Like, what do you know about SEO? How many hits a day are you going to get me? I felt so much more like empowered to do this on my own, not reliant on anybody else. And I feel like FOSTA SESTA just forced everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people back into this really unsafe situation where now like it's like the second uprising of the pimp, because now it's illegal for me if I meet like a young sex worker and I have a blog where I tell her how to do a date check and how to run a background. Now that's illegal. Or if I make a website for her so that she could handle her bookings and I like help her take pictures, now I would be trafficking her. And that's ridiculous. It's just a way to criminalize us further. And I feel like we made all these.
Well, they never even know if we even do that for girls, besides of the girls saying anything. So that is like a plus, because I do that for a lot of young trans women that I see or that is coming up. And it's not more so, it's just for them to be aware of what that they don't have to deal with everything that comes with sex work, because it's a lot of things that comes with it. It's a lot of, you at the end of the day, you're tired. You will end up being tired, I really started sex work at 12, and it not sexually, but I had older guys buying things for me and taking me shopping from an early age. And where I am today, I'm at a point where in a few years it's going to be done, because this is not that is all to me. This is not the only thing that I could do in my life, or this is not the only thing that is accessible to me in my life. So, there is a point in time that people have to be aware that you have to cut it out because it will take a toll on your mental, your health, and your mind and what you think that you could reach to in life and have and be.
Actually, could I jump in on that? Because I think before we run out of time, which we're not out of time yet, but we will be eventually, and I think it's very important to pose the question of, what should the politics of sex work look like? What are the political needs and demands of sex workers? What can people do to get involved in sex work? I mean, the New Jersey Red Umbrella Alliance.
What can they do to get involved?
Yeah. How can people, people who are going to watch this online and think, I want to support that cause, how can I be of support? I mean, what can people do and what needs to happen?
That's a tricky, that's
On the politics understanding, it gotta start with education because and spectrum to trans, Newark, African American, it all starts from survival. Whether you was put out, whether your girlfriend was doing it, whether you wanted to buy your hormones, because that was the thing at the time. You couldn't just go into a doctor and get your hormones. Right. So you needed to get your juice. And how are you gonna get this money when you're not in school or you're afraid to go to school or get a job because you're living your life and you don't want to be attacked just on doing that. It wasn't looked at as a norm for a trans or a young trans to be getting educated. So yeah, it has to be about the education to start any way, shape, form, fashion. You have to be one willing and open to understand that, hey, just because this person is selling their experience or their time for this money does not mean that they're harming anyone, okay? Because little do they know, in some situations, like this young lady said, people need a place to sleep. Not everybody comfortable with sleeping on the train. Not everybody comfortable with sleeping at the station. And then that puts you at a higher risk. If you're not gonna understand me, then we kind of got a dead end.
Yeah, like to bounce back off from her, like I said, when I first got homeless, I went to the booth in Passaic, New Jersey. My first guy, I went with him to sleep with him at a hotel, and me waking up, he's beating the shit out of me and having sex with me. So, and I'm not even knowing this guy from nothing. So me to have I put myself in harm, still trying to get away of survival and have something to sleep on, and those are the things, sex work. A lot of people see sex work with the glitz and glam and the money and the this and that. That is not, that comes with it. That is not, that is a false narrative of it. That is that is the one when you submit to the thing, to the harmony, and you never say nothing. But there is real life, serious things that goes on within the sex work industry and being a sex worker. It is very, I would say I don't want to say demonic, but it is very a demonic mental thing sometimes when people don't know how to navigate the customer or the person or the people that you bring into that you service.
I'm gonna say.
Perfect start. See how you having this group discussion? If you were to have a question and answer or open forum with political answers or even law enforcement, where it's more one-on-one, like this, that would be a perfect start because they get an understanding from the people front and center versus going on what they saying on Pretty Woman.
But I do have another. What made you guys come up with this panel?
Why are we doing it?
Yeah, well,
Yeah, I mean,
It's been in the works for me.
well, because for me, at first it was very shaky because a week ago it was a sex work rally, right? And it was nobody there. It was nobody there. So, and in North, right down the street. And at first they didn't want it to happen because, and I know that people contact records. I know that people contact the city hall. One of the lady who put it together got arrested and everything for it to still going along. So for me to get asked about, this panel and then that happened, it just was like like a pick up thing for me. Like, and I was a trans woman who was putting that together. So it just was, you know, a little of a,
So they targeted that rally, but they're not doing this probably because it was sponsored by a university.
No, but even more so, it's all about the setting, like I just said. If you want to invite a person in a more intimate setting and allow them the opportunity to ask and us the opportunity to speak our piece, that's one thing versus you in broad daylight are pushing something that people face that they're not understanding. They're gonna receive it completely different.
And also.
well, I know.
With two things. What she said, what Aminah's talking about with the education is key to first getting their attention. Because you can't just get mad because they're not accepting you. They didn't accept a whole lot of things, but the educational piece they had a focus group, I'm gonna just say this earlier, and it was young trans people who have grown. I've seen them struggle, and I could actually say to the ones who were there, I said, I've seen you struggle, but I've also seen you grow. And I've seen you come miles to the point where you're willing to help other young people not go through the same struggles that you went through. And it's the same process. And it's an unfortunate situation, but that's the way we bring forth change. We bring forth change with ourselves, with our community, and just how, Aminah, you have said, I've seen you light them kids up, but I've also seen you be a mother to a lot of these little wretched kids, showing them the right way to do things. From Angie, it's the same thing. So it's like, it's the process. Somebody has to show the younger ones what they need to do and about paying attention to education. And a lot of them don't want to listen until they find out, okay, I'm sick of you, I can't deal with it no more, and you do this. Then they realize they out there alone and they see where they had their back covered. They have to realize what side they're, got their back. And a lot of them don't do that. And that's part of our problem. We have too many people in our community that is turncoat, because if it doesn't affect them personally,
they just watch you. They just watch you go through this. They watch you be homeless. They watch you be hungry. They watch you be broke.
The homeless piece, I'm gonna say this because I have a little wretched little nephew, told that little trumpet what to do, but he didn't want to listen. He done went to 4 different states, locked up in each one, and still locked up right now. And I don't care who he is, his mama, whoever else. But he had what you would call carte blanche here, but he didn't want to listen and follow the rules. I don't give a damn who you are as a grown person, as a young person, as an older person, you have to follow rules.
That's
Right.
Could you direct them like to the Red Umbrella Alliance just to get, your sort of organizational analysis of sex work policy?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
well, I was going to say that there are so many intersections when advocating for like the human and labor rights of sex workers, because I feel we deal not only with stigma, but there is a multi-billion-dollar lobbying arm that is basically being used by law enforcement, NGOs like Polaris Project and things that reduce our life experience to just trafficking or criminal without much respect for our humanity or dignity. I feel like we are going to need money. We're going to need the aid of quote unquote respectable institutions, as horrible as that sounds. I think there's a reason why, things like pride have gotten so
Commercial.
Yeah.
commercial, but also gotten more acceptable because a lot of the things that made people afraid, and I know it's very contentious, but the work that was done to normalize, and I'm using the biggest air quotations in the word normalize, LGBT, well, mostly affluent gay white men, but what was done to normalize their gay rights, it's not something that's easily done for people of color who are trans, gender queer, people of color that are undocumented, people of color that have been incarcerated, people of color that are drug users. It's so much harder to humanize them within our current legal system, that what we really need are strong advocates. And that could be something as easy as writing a letter to your representative, writing a letter to the editor of your local paper saying that you support decriminalization and sex workers' rights, that you support trans rights. And I think the next step after that is showing up for groups and advocates who are doing the work. And there are groups like New Jersey Red Umbrella Alliance, groups like GLITS, groups like African American Office of Gay Concern. There's Best Policy Practices, who are all trying to make the political changes that will give us our dignity that we're supposed to have, via the Constitution. But we're in America, and America isn't Americaing for everybody, and it never has.
I agree some. I think we need to bridge the gap, like the generational gap, the cultural gap. Can't teach an old dog new tricks. Some of these old folks. What are they calling us? The Gen X? We're bridging the gap between the analog and digital worlds. We had to navigate our way through, but I mean, we deal with the older people that hate us and their views on it. And we grew into understanding and knowing what it is because we became the sex worker community. But like she said, we need to make sure that people show up for us. We have to make sure we get in touch with our politicians, the community that actually supports us, and then try to change the hearts and minds of the people that hate us and think that we should be hung from a freaking tree because of who we are and what we do. We have to really work on that because politicians will, I call it the boca pa afuera. They'll come and pretend like they care. Like when Murphy's administration first came in, sure, they reached out to Red Umbrella Alliance because they wanted input on the trans community. And that was all they asked about, and that was it. Like they got a little bit of feedback. We never heard back from them. Just that one time and then nothing at all.
That's just like,
they don't really care. It's all for show.
Yeah, and then it becomes of like, don't half-ass us. Don't want to just pull up when it's convenient for you.
To make
Stay
yourself look
consistent,
good.
right? Stay consistent and really show your hand and support behind these things. Because African American Office is just one facet that stay consistent in this in the evolution when it comes to LGBTQIA. But then you got some other organizations that will start something and don't see it through, and then it becomes about comfortability and consistency. So now, they done burnt us or made us feel this way, just like everybody else. Now, what do we do?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of.
What you could do, this is just a suggestion. Trans Y'all have made strides, and I'm telling you, you made strides because they put money where their mouth is. There's several organizations in the city of Newark that got, well, more than just several, that got trans money. All of a sudden, it's a new regime of trans money and programs, but I'm like, ooh,
They ain't giving it to the trans people.
no,
They will
some
show
of them.
up.
They
give-
are.
They're not showing up.
I'm telling you, from today's, what I was part of,
They're not
this
showing up.
focus group was around trans. And they were taking, they were taking care of.
Transfer, but they want to ignore the sex work aspect. They want to make it all about the trans community and leave out the sex work aspect.
But here's
Because
what-
that's not the respect of the
What I'm trying to
Aaron is
say,
saying,
that they got the money. Now that they have the money, it is the job and the opportunity of the trans community to now start advocating, start pushing their agenda, not their agenda, but y'all agenda to get what you want. And with the politicians, but there's more money coming. And, you know,
But
you
Aaron,
can fight, what do you call it? Fight about the apples and the oranges. But the thing is, you want them to recognize you for your efforts and what y'all dealing with. So that means, okay, I'll smile.
Aaron,
Yeah,
excuse me for cutting you off.
shut up.
But see, what you're saying is money is there for the trans community. They're not really showing up. But what we are talking about here today deals with the trans community, but sex work. Because they'll show up with that. But it's like, we need more input into the sex work community. And a lot of girls will show up for that, but they want to be out there selling the kush, you know?
I know,
And-
Yeah, honestly, in sex
know
work
why?
organizing, we'd rather be
Honestly,
working.
let me tell you why. Because honestly, if I would have not been here, I would have been made, I would have been made 250
Me too.
long this time ago.
I need to hang
Hours
out with y'all.
ago. But at the end of the day, yes, we do not want to go somewhere where you're giving me $100 or $50 to talk about my experience when I'm about to make $1,000 for a night. No, I would not. No, I would not show up and give you that. No, because at the end of the day, my time and my everything is beyond just you getting a piece of information, what you're going to do for the next type of thing that you have going on for your own career. No.
But you know, now, this is something that I kind of looked into, and I didn't actually have a chance to talk with anyone, but everybody always is talking about, oh, well, prostitution is legal in Paris. Yes, it is.
Legal in a lot of
But-
places.
But the thing is, I mean, even what, Nevada?
Just counties under 400,000, which is not Clark County, Las Vegas.
But I'm saying, you know,
LA.
but the thing is, the rules differ because in Paris, yeah, you be out there selling it. But if the guy is caught with you, he's gonna be fined or locked up. Okay?
Or
it's
they
that-
criminalize the client.
Yeah, okay, and like here, it's like, you have to go to a brothel. You know, and they have to pay taxes. And it's just like, with Newark, it's like, take your chances, flip a coin. You know, that's really the reality of it. If a girl is out there, she's flipping a coin, praying that she don't get locked up or hurt. And the John, he's flipping a coin, praying that he don't get locked up, hurt, or go home with a package that he'll regret picking up. You know, so no matter where the money is for focus groups, everybody needs to be on board and advocate for whatever they're gonna have out there,
Yeah, I agree.
you know?
Yeah, and it was like you said, if it's not for, we're trying to do it for the greater good, and a lot of people aren't concerned with the greater good.
No,
They're just concerned with
they're
things
not.
now. But
And-
that's what the survival is about.
And
There's
people-
really nothing
and
we can do
people
about
really
that.
haven't listened to me the past decade or more.
Oh.
Thank you. When I actually put it to them that when the Compton Cafe riot started, the Stonewall riot started, that was for rights for everybody. You didn't see in a group photo, half on the side was trans and the court over here was, no, it was everybody fighting for rights for everybody. And since then, society has just put it out there, we're gonna divide and conquer because they're too strong.
We're going to divide and
Yeah, I pointed
give,
that out too.
give gays and non-binary and everything.
Everybody
The rights
reasons
the
to-
rights of this, and then we're going to make it
And
harder
then,
for
and
trans
then when
women.
it comes down to the sex workers, which was also part of that, those riots.
And we always get shitted on worse.
They were like, just kick the hookers to the side, they'll be okay.
Continue divide of what was a unified, just one word, gay, and everybody was up under that umbrella.
Yeah.
But continue to divide.
Divide and
Divide to the groups get smaller and smaller. and then it's
Divide
not really a
and
united front because, oh, well, I'm not gay.
Yeah.
Binary.
Yes.
Oh, I'm not this. And then at the same time, girl, you out there with the wolves. You need to join
Okay,
forces
you
with
need to
everybody.
join forces, that's it.
And that's what is really harming us because early on, the impact from a gay united front was much stronger than what is going on now.
Yeah.
So can I jump in on that now, because it is my grim duty to keep time too, and we are going to be running out of time pretty quickly here actually, and that might be a good note to sort of pivot to wrapping things up. I guess I wonder, Thayane, maybe if you've got a sort of closing question and everybody could sort of briefly weigh in on it, because I think that's probably all the time we have remaining. It's our hope from the Queer Newark Oral History Project that, this is not the end of a conversation, but part of a sustained and ongoing conversation that's also connected, hopefully, to action. We would like very much to think about ways that we can enlist Rutgers and enlist, the kind of academic side of that project in, various struggles for justice and liberation, including sex worker rights and sex worker
Get some
decriminalization.
hookers in class.
And get the schools to stop looking down on sex work, because I'm a Montclair State alumni, and I don't think they even support sex work. Like, I try to do a call with the Hispanic alumni, and the minute I mentioned sex worker, I could see the face of one of them, and I was like, oh, here we go.
But
And it's just, yeah.
Because they're not.
That's the generational
I
cultural
would
gap.
suggest, don't just put it out as sex workers and don't go too specific. You have women in gender studies. That is a perfect opportunity to segue into sex work, transgender, and all that aspect of getting at least a conversation about sex work in the particulars of it or the dynamics of it.
Yeah, and I graduated
Not
like
to
over
live with,
20
I
years
was saying live
ago.
with Dennis.
I graduated Rutgers in 2009, and I know how it feels like to be a sex worker on this campus, terrified that you might get kicked off of campus because the person that checks all your guests in, is not stupid and is threatening to turn you in, and knowing that that could be something that could have got me kicked out of school. So it's hard to trust the academic structure as a sex worker, and hard to trust because all these gay organizations that had a lot of clout and influence, when they went after rentboy.com, they were silent. They weren't sticking up for those gay sex workers. So I do feel like sometimes you do have to kick open the door and start the conversation, and clearly stating that you are going to be talking about sex workers' rights, whether they be human rights or labor rights, but you are talking about sex workers, because I think it's if we try to go under any other umbrella, we're always the first to be sacrificed.
And I exercise my rights. Like last time I was living here, I reported my slumlord that he was trying to pimp me out, constantly bringing men by, constantly asking me how much he should tell them, trying to get me to open a brothel. Then I came to realize he was trying to set me up because he had been busted. But still, I went ahead and I reported it. I went to special victims right here, Essex County. I told them what was happening. Do you think I ever heard back from them?
No.
Of course not. Every assault I've had, I've reported. And then the one prosecutor lady that was just assigned my public defender, and I just blacked the fuck out on her last month. She had the nerve to say, why didn't you report it when it happened? Like, she yelled at me. Why didn't you report it when it happened? Well, gee, I had my nose fucking broken, my head busted open. That was reported and nothing was done. You guys knew who it was and swept it under the rug. Why am I gonna report? I get rid. What do? They don't put in the police report. They don't do anything about it. They lie in the police report and then they act like it never happened. And they give them a PTI. Like,
Time off
okay.
the desk and still getting.
No, he only got in trouble for telling me about a prostitution thing. Nothing at all with the fact that he fucking cuffed me and raped me. Nothing at all. And he was licensed by the state. He wasn't a cop. But everything I've always reported, I got assaulted January 2020. I reported that because the young white males in a group all busted in. And then they showed me a video of another girl in a bathroom. They were doing a date with her and then busted the door open on her. So they were serial offenders of looking for sex workers, doing dates in the bathrooms with them, and then letting their friends run in and gang rape or run the train on her. I reported that because I called security from their room. They called the cops. I said, I said, I'm not talking to no cops because they tried to tell me they were cops. I said, I'm going to special victims. You keep their information. I went and I reported it. You think I've heard anything back? And I keep pressing the issue. I just pressed it again last month. When I had to go to court for my trespass, I said, I'm here in court for trying to work. I go, why aren't I being called to court with those guys that assaulted me that said they were cops? That's a crime for them to sit there and try to do a date for me and then tell me they're cops to try to assault me and rob me right now. And of course, nothing. And I still try to get attention around it. And I keep pressing it and people act like they're tired of hearing about it. I'm like, but you have to be made aware that we constantly report stuff and this is how we get treated. And I'm not gonna stop reporting it. I'm gonna keep being up your fucking ass about why you're not doing anything about the fact that I keep getting assaulted. I have been, but they're told not to. Well, they're just pissed because of those. They're told not to report shit. Remember, mainstream media is getting paid. I reported everything to the fact, like everything down to sending them videos of cops that were tricking and saying, okay, I just got kicked out of this place 50 times, but look at me here tricking with this cop for an hour and a half and nobody's kicking me out. And they get pissed.
Well, that's why
They get pissed at me because I sent the fucking video. But the reporters wanted the videos, so I wanted to do it.
There's always ways to do that.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
And we're shadow banned on social media. That's another thing. We're shadow banned on social media. How do we report and get our issues out when they're shadow banning us on social media?
I'm not listening. Always waiting, baby.
I don't know if you had a closing question. I mean, we are gonna run out of time. I apologize. I mean, that's a very heavy note to follow up on. I really appreciate it though. I don't know if people, we're kind of ending on a chaotic note here, basically, because we're running out of time is what I'm trying to say. So I don't know if maybe we want to go around and let everybody make a very brief final statement and then we'll call it. Does that sound all right? And we don't even feel obligated, just want to create a space for everybody to just sort of offer a final thought. But again, probably a brief one if that's possible. And again, sorry for, just sort of ending things like this, but we do have to watch the time for the library. So.
Okay, I'll go first. I'm just so glad that I'm on a panel with my niece and how much she has grown. And just to see her, and hear her, she's not cussing nobody out or hitting nobody with nothing. And just, making her point. I'm just so proud of her. And it's like to see these young people, just the growth is just such a good thing, I just wanted to say that.
I think so for me, I just want to say we're gonna forever be us, whether we're LGBTQIA, straight, gay. The fact is we're human. So understand that everybody walk of life is not the same, and we've come to this sex work path. Respect it and allow us to go do and live what we need to, but at the same time, don't shun us or shadow ban us, because at the end of the day, we're human. And our story pretty much some of our stories that will help the other generations, but you have to be willing to give us a chance, to the politicians, the law enforcement, and even the higher up when it comes to like when we go to the jail system or the court system for something that has nothing to do with trafficking. Don't look at us as our presentation, know that we're human. And we too go through shit and we have feelings.
That's perfectly said. I don't think I could add to that. I'm just here for the fight, and I'm just trying to change hearts and minds of people who are not willing to fight with us, to make them open their eyes and say, even if I don't agree with sex work, I still agree with you being a human and you deserve the same safety measures and everything, and the same labor rights even if I don't agree with your job.
Absolutely, because ultimately, again, for us, this is survival. This is my daughter, and I'm here because she gonna live her life, but I'm gonna live my life, but it's certain things I've experienced that I'm not gonna let her experience. So it's all about understanding we're human. We bleed like you bleed now, whether or not we just sucked you up or vice versa, we still, we're here. We had to do what we had to do.
I agree with him.
I just, people who will get involved with sex work, just know that, it's a point in time where you should be aware of when you should exit out, and you should want better for yourself and go for things that you dream of and see for yourself, and don't just limit yourself to being a sex worker, or limit to yourself being someone that has to be submissive to people, or stand your ground with clients and people, and let them know, treat yourself how you want to be treated in life, and let positive things come to you within doing choosing these things, or if it comes to you, and be safe.
Oh, I guess I want to say to the younger sex workers that are out there, or just any sex workers that are participating, that if you ever need help or assistance, NJRUA is here for you, and we will try our best. And you could always find us at njrua.org. We're on all the socials, and we will answer. And I guess also just one old hoe to the young ones. I guess if I had any advice, the part about leaving the life that no one tells you is you might stop and then realize that corporate life is worse. And it's totally okay to feel that way. And you may find it just like sex work is work. It is what you do, but it's not all. So even when you are working or not working, I hope that you do not start viewing yourself the way the world is conditioned to view you.
I didn't contribute a whole lot to the panel, just because I felt like, to see the space to the people that are actually involved in sex work can happen, and I didn't want to center my voice. However, I will say that sex work is a service, same like getting a massage, getting a haircut. There are services that people provide for other people. We all sell our bodies in our jobs for some way. In our labor and what we do. And so I think we attach these moralistic judgments to the how, but if you are working in a factory, you're using your body to make money. And so I think that And I feel like, and also when you think about the subject of sex, we are all having sex for something, validation, love, intimacy, relationship, a free meal, whatever, there is an exchange that is happening during sex. And so who is to say which reason is more or less moral than another?
And then at that point, what constitutes and what doesn't constitute as sex work? Because like you said, it's always something for
Marriage is
something.
It's always something, but it's always an exchange. There's always an exchange that's happening when you're engaging in that. And so, attaching these moralistic judgments to it and making it so that it's criminalized means that people are not safe and people are dying. And that's really the most important part about this is how do we stop people from dying? Because criminalization has not stopped it from happening, ever. It's never stopped it from happening. And it never will. People are always going to do this and they have a right to. People should have autonomy to do what they want with their money and to do what they want with their bodies, within reason, obviously. So I think the conversation around criminalization is, okay, we're not stopping people from doing this, but criminalization clearly, how do we reduce harm? Because a lot of harm is happening because this thing is criminalized. And so we need to have conversations around decriminalization, same like we do with drugs, and the conversation around decriminalization of drugs is the same thing. Is how do we reduce harm? Because the fact that these things are criminalized and causing a lot of harm in our communities, a lot of harm in our trans communities and our LGBT communities. And so how do we open up these conversations so that harm is reduced, and that people can flourish and thrive, and people can leave if they want to leave, and people can do it if they want to do it, and people can have autonomy around how they navigate this space.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.